Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. It's Patricia Warby, Alchemy Therapies here, and today it's not exactly a book review, but I'm going to be talking about the gene keys. And the reason it's not a review is because I haven't quite finished the book, as you can see. In fact, I'm working my way through it. This is a workbook, a bit in the similar vein to A Course in Miracles, if you've come across that. But this is Richard Rudd's work. And he claims it was kind of downloaded for him. The book wrote itself, in other words. It's an updating of a lot of the ancient divination methods, like the I-ching, which is a Chinese divination schema, which consists of 64 different, I guess, arrangements. You usually toss a coin, or actually you get lines that correspond to 64 different patterns, and 64 is an interesting number. It's obviously 8 squared, but it's more than that. It has within it many significances in terms of, we see a lot of numbers recurring in nature in the theme of I guess the structure and the pattern of mathematical computation. And nature is mathematical in origin. It has relationships, and 64 is one of the numbers that comes up time and time again. 12 is another important number, 9. There are quite a few sort of embedded really in the structure of space and time. But anyway, I'm not going to go into mathematics today. But you have 64 basic responses to a question. That's what the I Ching was. And I've used it before when I've been facing difficulties in my life and I wanted a guidance. I suppose in some ways it's similar to tarot, but without perhaps some of the negative connotations that tarot might have. And I've never been too sure of tarot. It always seemed to be the last resort of people who were quite desperate. And I wanted more of a proactive, scientific way of looking at the world. And what I love about the Gene Keys and Richard Rudd's work is that he's updated it in the light of what we call the new biology, which was started by Dr. Bruce Lipton, who came to realize that cells, and DNA in particular, respond to the environment well before we'd heard the term epigenetics. Okay, so he was quite in advance of his time, understanding that DNA is a vibrational molecule. It's not the static double helix that we see in textbooks. It vibrates, and it responds very well to your thoughts and emotions, and in particular your unconscious belief systems. And that's what the Gene Keys is here to do, is here to transform your unconscious beliefs into something that's less stuck, your shadow side, moving through your creativity into your higher purpose. And so, in fact, the subtitle of the Gene Keys book is Embracing Your Higher Purpose. And like, everybody comes here and wants to know, who am I? What's life about? And what am I here to do or be? I mean, basically, that's the human condition. And I think we're seeing more and more that science and spirituality are actually combining in a way to show us that there is meaning and purpose embedded in the complex system of life itself. And as human beings, we're right slap bang in the middle of the scale, from the quantum, the very, very small, to the cosmic, the very, very large. And if you logarithmically chart the sizes of, from the Planck scale to the cosmological, you'll see that human beings sit right in the middle, which is interesting to me. Nature always has purpose. Nothing is random. And so there must be a reason why we're able to communicate between the higher and the lower, if you like, as above, so below. The mystical traditions would tell us that. So we have a means of influencing what occurs in our world. In other words, our consciousness is central and creates reality. Okay, but that's a very global kind of awareness. How do you actually do that at a fundamental level? How do you change your consciousness? How do you come out of fear and into joy? And into connection, I should say, even more importantly, because so many people have lost connection. And that's why I believe we're seeing such a huge rise in mental illness and disconnect and and the terrible ecological degradation that we're seeing of the world we live in, because people don't feel connected to the world in which we live. And so I think the gene keys is an important awareness, and I wanted to cover it today. I have no vested interest in the gene keys. I don't own any I don't have any involvement. I don't own shares. I don't have any affiliate connection with it. As ever, I'm free to say what I feel about this. And I wanted to take you through some of the ideas from the vibrational nature of DNA, looking at how that is impacted on a personal level. And then I want to finish with reading you my, what he calls hologenetic profile, and on what you do to create this. And it's entirely free. If you go to genekeys.com, there's a free plug for you, Richard. You get your free hologenetic profile by putting in your birth date and time, if you have the time of your birth. And I did that, fully expecting it to be a bit, gobbledygooky, a bit wishy-washy. But what came back was so unbelievably accurate. I kind of was a bit astounded. And that's what made me want to investigate further, that there could be something in this, that your DNA is coded from the moment of your birth. The moment of your conception, I should say, which obviously reads to 9 months later to your birth. So a criticism of that could be, oh, well, it's just an update of astrology. Well, yeah, maybe it is. But the idea that there is some cosmological linkage between the human condition and the cosmological, I think, is no longer in question. And I would say astrology has been maligned, of course, because it's been bastardized, cheapened somewhat by the way it's been interpreted. But when you understand that it used to be considered in high regard, that of course we would have some linkage to the universe in which we're embedded, and that might play out via the unconscious energetic resonance of our being over our lifetime. What we see now as astrology is kind of cheapened in that sort of you will have good luck this week, or you'll meet the love of your life, or whatever. And of course that's not what it truly is. And so I think, putting that aside, the gene keys is a really fundamentally scientifically based system. Please don't ask me for for a randomized control trial or a Cochrane review, because of course it's not covered. Biology, and science in particular, is only just catching up with some of these new ideas, that mind and body are one thing, that mind creates matter, consciousness is central. And I would refer you to some very eminent scientists. Michael Levin at Tufts University is doing a lot on a sort of the consciousness of cells, how morphogenetic feels, which used to be the buzzword of Rupert Sheldrake, and again, much pilloried, is now coming into the mainstream because of some of the work he and his team are doing. There's him, there's Glen Jeffery at UCL, looking into photobiomodulation, how light impacts the human body and changes the expression of our genes, etc., etc. There's, oh gosh, so many people who to mention. I think if you go back to that, there was a chap in 1929, and I'm trying to find his name, Alexander Gurtzwitch, I hope I've pronounced that correctly, who showed that onion roots would communicate through light, through biophotons. And so what happened to one root would be communicated to another. And updating that today to the work of people like Glen Jeffery, like Jack Kruse, we see that light may be absolutely fundamental to communication, even within the basic units of our cells, the mitochondria, the energy producers, and that communication of what's going on environmentally. And by environment, I don't just mean the physical environment, I mean the mental environment, the thoughts and feelings of the person that has the cellular biology. So it's it's very, very interesting what's going on, I think, in science at the moment that's beginning to corroborate some of these more outlandish ideas. I remember it was Einstein who said if something isn't deemed ridiculous at first, then there's no hope, that we basically, things that are new and paradigm shifting initially will be ridiculed until they're accepted as self-evident. And so I think that's what's going on in science at the moment. And it's so interesting. So back to the gene keys then. So there's 64 patterns that generally play themselves out. And every person has a group of them that kind of affect our lives more than any other. And by plugging in your birth date, you kind of get an interpretation, let's say, of the kind of person you are, what your challenges are, what your kind of purpose and liberation path might be, and ultimately what you could achieve if you transcended your limitations. So there's like the shadow side, and there's also the divine, the transcendent. And I think if we understand that DNA is this kind of intermediate molecule between consciousness, mind, and matter, that it transmits information, probably by light, but it might be light that we don't perceive. A lot of the biophotonic transmission is in the infrared or ultraviolet ends of the spectrum, which our eyes can't perceive, but modern devices can actually measure. So we're seeing that DNA is far more than just a fixed coil. It's a vibration, and so our journey in life may be dictated by this particular configuration of our DNA, which was set at the time of our conception. That's the premise of this work, right? And whether you think that's ridiculous or not, bear with me. Okay, so you plug in your birth date and you get this response out, your hologenetic profile. And I think what really convinced me was the accuracy of the one for me. And I'm going to therefore read out a little bit of it and also analyze what it taught me. Okay, so it's broken down into several different sections. Okay, so and this comes automatically. You just put your name in, put your date of birth, and the algorithm kind of computes it. And here's what I was told. So my life's work, what I'm here to do, and mine is gene key 13. And gene key 13, you can go to the book and read all about gene key 13, but here's a quick summary. And I'm going to read certainly quite a lot of this. Of all people, you are one of the greatest potential guides of others. Whether you guide people formally or informally is not important. What matters is that you come to realize the power you have within you. Your power lies in the art of listening. Now, what do I do for a living? I'm a therapist. I work with trauma release, and I do it mostly online, although if people happen to live near me, they can come and see me. So what do? I listen. So I thought, wow, that's pretty much the first two sentences describe what I'm doing now. It continues, there is a stillness at the heart of your being that allows you to look at someone's life, particularly their past, and see it in an optimistic light. Now, their past is what I work with, okay? In particular, when you're releasing trauma, you have to acknowledge that most trauma occurs during childhood. Some very early birth experience, some is gestational when you're in the womb, but a lot is in the childhood. So we're looking at what happened before. We're looking right back to the past. And the way I work, I've become aware, I've been guided to do this, is that I stay present with that person in their reality without judgment. Okay. And so I see them about to transform. I don't see them where they are now stuck. I see them as about to transform. And so they're on the path to transformation. And so it is an extremely optimistic view. And then it says your optimism springs from your ability to view each life from the level of myth. You know that every individual is a hero or heroine acting out an archetypal drama. Now, the way I tend to work is I look at things in terms of unconscious perception. And the way that you talk to the unconscious isn't through language. It isn't, well, not in the sense of analysis. It isn't through logic or reason. It's through myth and story and sort of the act of creation of, I guess, something that represents the truth. That's what myths do. They're a representation, they're an archetype. Okay, so it's an archetypal drama that people are going through in life. And so I was just like, yes, blown away by this. Because you can read between the lines of life in this way, others love to be around you. Now, I can't say whether people love to be around me or not. Certainly people do seek me out. They come to me to work with me. But that's beautiful to believe that. You accept suffering as grace and can always find the lesson in it. Now, I wrote a book in, I think it was 2021, about the loss of my mum, first to Alzheimer's. Well, actually, it may not have been Alzheimer's. It was never diagnosed. I think possibly it was vascular dementia, but she gradually, we lost her basically before she died. And then she died very suddenly during the second lockdown, during COVID, I think from isolation, loneliness, and a loss of hope. But I wrote a book and I subtitled it Letting Go with Grace, because it taught me that there is grace even in the most deep suffering. You can always find a lesson in whatever happens in life. And sometimes it isn't easy and you don't want to accept it. I really struggled with the loss of my mum and her fear and her dislocation and the loss of connection with her, which had always been tentative anyway, but to lose the person you've loved over a period of a few years is really, really hard. And I came out feeling, well, we'd healed a lot in that time, and that was the grace. So I can't say whether I would like to feel that I do accept suffering as grace, that there is always something positive that emerges even from the darkest times. And it says this makes you empathically very comfortable to be around because others sense that you will never judge them. Well, when I'm working, I don't judge people. Obviously, in my personal life, I'm a human like everybody else and probably do judge people, but I at least recognize that I'm judging them, and I'm working on that. Okay, but in my professional life, I certainly don't. And then the final line in this particular gene key: your key in life is to apply your gifts first of all to yourself, and this will unlock everything for you. Now, for those of you who know me, I've been on this journey now for probably 20 years or so from my own suffering with chronic fatigue syndrome. And I now no longer consider myself suffering from that particular condition. I'm recovered. And I know that's not a popular statement because there are many people who haven't recovered from it. But I know many, many people who have, because I know that you need to work through the emotional and the unconscious in order to get there. And most programs don't touch that. So I'm at a crossroads in my life too, because I've become a trauma therapist. I work with people who have chronic anxiety, chronic fatigue, chronic pain, and that's my specialism. But recently I've become aware that there's a new path for me, and I don't know what that new path is, but I'm open to exploring it, whatever it is. It's going to be in a similar vein, but maybe helping people in a different way. But I made the decision this year, 2025, I would explore myself what blocks there are within me psychically to exploring this new avenue, whatever it is. And so I'm about to embark on a plant medicine journey. I will record separately a video about that, and I'll link it here because that's something that's I'm in the preparation phase at the moment, but it's in a week's time. I am understandably nervous, but I know that it's the right time for me. I've been guided to do it. I found a good person to do it with. And I think, yes, it may well unlock everything. I don't know, but I'll be letting you know about that. So what's the next level for me? Well, my evolution, what I'm here to learn is gene key 7 for me. And one of the challenges in life is to step up as a leader. That's what it says. So yes, leading, that's a difficult one. Okay. For you, leadership must be based on the highest aspect of your life's work. That is your ability to listen to others. So I need to be able to speak about what I do without shame, without having to answer to people who don't understand or aren't looking for the answers I'm giving. I can't be all things to all people, but I need to be able to tell you that healing is possible. Healing is there for most people, I would say all people, but you have to be careful not to guarantee anything. If you're ready and you're willing to face the shadow side of you, the darker aspects, the bits that haven't been healed, the bits that maybe are calling out to you, but you're too afraid to face them. And I need to be able to influence others to carry on my life's work, because there's only one of me, and eventually I'm not going to be here. So to be a true leader, it says, you have to find the delicate balance between fulfilling other people's needs as opposed to their wishes. Okay, and that's very much come up for me this year, because, you know, people want to be fixed, they want to be healed now, yesterday. And that isn't always the way things are going to go. And when you take this path to healing, sometimes the road is bumpy and it can go down before it goes up. But you will learn who you are and what you're here to be. And so it says, in your position, you will sometimes have to disappoint people. But if you are listening to the collective good in the long run, you will foster no resentment. Well, I hope that's true. I certainly do get some attacks and resentment on my YouTube channel, unfortunately. But there are people out there who have nothing better to do than attack others based on their opinions. And, you know, everyone has the right to an opinion. But, you know, to deliberately seek to attack, I never do that. I'm kind. You know, if I disagree with something, I will first praise the good points before maybe putting forward what I disagree with. I don't go into all-out attack straight away, but some people do, and they enjoy it. People with attachment wounds, largely. So guidance means that one hears all the different opinions and then aligns the group to the path of least resistance. So you're trying to find a way forward by pulling opinions together and finding out the commonalities. And that's the way forward. It's never to force your will on someone. You have a genetic responsibility to move some part of humanity forward into a new future. Well, if that's true, and I hope it is, my new path, whatever that is going to be part of that. I won't read all of it because I'm sure it's not as relevant to listeners as it is to me, but just one final point was what keeps me healthy. You must ensure that no area of your life is allowed to stagnate. This is gene key 1. Your body is highly sensitive to your environment. Absolutely true. Okay. I'm electrically quite sensitive. I'm sensitive to light levels. The seasons really affect me. Smells really affect me. Other people's emotions really affect me. I can feel them. So I'm a highly sensitive person as well. I wrote a book about that. And so it's not a good idea for me to hang on to objects that keep me in the past. Now, yesterday I did a bit more clearance. It's obviously a good time for that, the start of a new year. And I've been getting rid of things that I no longer resonate with. And, you know, we do accumulate over time, don't we? So it says here, once you have completed something, it no longer exists for you. And that's true to some extent. You know, my books, I've written 8. I've put my heart and soul into each one. I am very proud of them, but I can't live through that now. I have to move on. It's really about what I'm doing now. And that's the big question mark, which I have, is what am I here to do now? And we'll find out, I'm sure. And what deeply fulfills me, this is the final one. Through you, a new world is trying to incarnate, come into being. This means that you're really here as a vessel for humanity's future direction. I mean, this is astonishing. I mean, if this is, true, wonderful. You do not really belong in your own time in this sense, because you always stand at the cutting edge of human achievement. Well, I hope so. I'm certainly researching the cutting edge of science, from biophotomodulation, quantum biology, mitochondrial dynamics. As I've said, I find all that absolutely fascinating. But the price that I may pay for this is to be easily misunderstood by the mass consciousness. Of course, I'm a former scientist who's crossed over to the dark side, to kind of mysticism, to spirituality, to a deeper connection. And I have been pilloried for that, because it's not peer reviewed. So there we are. It isn't, because the conventional science establishment doesn't want to go into areas which have been traditionally seen as outside their remit, because it doesn't pay the bills, okay? If we can give people tools to heal themselves, what we would think of as sort of the decentralization of healthcare, then, we're going to transform everything, but we're going to absolutely demonetize all the establishment figures, from the research side through to the pharmaceutical industry, through to the regulatory bodies. We're going to take money from that, because we're going to give it back to people at the source, which is what you believe, what you feel, how you resonate with the life you're living. And so it's a direct threat to that, which of course has huge resources to undermine. And it wouldn't surprise me if some of the, people who are out there putting negative comments on things that don't fit the mainstream are paid for by some of that establishment. We don't know. We'll never know, because of course social media is entirely anonymous, and you can create an account and say anything you like without consequence, which is part of the reason why it's so supremely damaging. So here we are. I must endeavor to fulfill my life's work and learn and from my evolution. So as I'm about to find out next week, and this will act as the turbine that drives my exciting and groundbreaking life. Well, that's a supremely positive idea of who I am and what I'm here to do. And so, I would encourage you to maybe explore that. And again, it's entirely up to you. Whatever you choose to do to find out what your purpose is, don't hold back. Don't think that the life you're living right now is the only one, and live a stuck and uninspiring life. Find a way to get connected, whether that's through nature, whether it's through joining a group of like-minded individuals, whether it's listening to all the amazing new science that's out there on YouTube and other platforms. There is such a wellspring, literally from the ground up wellspring of imaginative, new, transcendent ideas out there, that there is no excuse for wallowing in self-pity or stuckness. And folks, if any of this sounds interesting to you, you can find me on alchemytherapies.co.uk, all my books, all my courses, and I look forward to hearing from you. Take care. Bye for now.